They found a cabin deep in the Appalachian Mountains, West Virginia, October 2004. The leaves had just begun to turn, reed, amber, and a slow-burning orange blanketed the narrow trails winding through the Appalachian Mountains. For most people, it was the perfect time to camp. Crisp air, fewer bugs, and just enough chill to make the fire feel sacred. But for 5 college friends from Morgantown, this trip was more than just a getaway. It was a final hurrah before life scattered them after graduation. They weren't looking for anything strange. No one packed Ouija boards or whispered about ghosts. It was supposed to be 3 nights of beer, hiking, and bad jokes. But the forest had other plans, and what they found, buried in the silence of the woods, was something that none of them ever spoke of again. Not to their families, not to each other. So before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And let me know in the comments where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. They took Clara Morgan's Jeep Cherokee. She was the responsible one of the group, always with an extra flashlight, always checking the weather, always one step ahead. The rest of the group included Tyler, the jokester, who brought more hot dogs than anyone could possibly eat, Renee and Josh, the off-again, on-again couple who were constantly bickering but still clung to each other in the dark, and Kevin, who barely said anything at all. They drove 3 hours past familiar towns, beyond cell phone signal, and even further from gas stations. Clara had marked a potential campsite on an old Forest Service map she found online, a place without an official trail, where they could be alone, really alone. They parked the Jeep off a gravel service road, shouldered their packs, and followed a barely visible deer path. It was Kevin who saw it first, the edge of the roof poking through the treetops, blackened but almost hidden by vines. "You guys see that?" he muttered, half to himself. The others turned, following his gaze. There it stood, as if forgotten by time, an old cabin, crooked and leaning, but somehow intact. No trail led to it, no signs of previous visitors. It was the kind of thing you'd expect to see in a scary movie, right before everything goes wrong. Tyler joked about finally finding Bigfoot's Airbnb, but Clara felt something shift in her chest, not quite fear, more like pressure, as if the air near the cabin was heavier than anywhere else. She didn't say anything. She just looked at the others, half hoping someone would suggest leaving, but of course they didn't. Josh was already pushing open the cabin door, which creaked like something out of a Halloween sound effects CD. "Guys, this is insane," he called out. "It's like totally empty inside. We could stay here instead of pitching tents." Renee rolled her eyes. "You just don't want to set up your tent again after last time." They laughed. They walked inside, and the forest behind them, as if exhaling after holding its breath for years, grew quiet. Clara stepped in last. The floor creaked under her boots, and the air smelled wrong. Not musty like you would expect from an old building, but almost metallic, like rust or blood. She told herself it was just in her head. The inside was simple. Just one large room with a collapsed stone fireplace, dust-covered shelves, and old furniture that looked hand-carved and brittle. No modern signs of life. No beer cans. No graffiti. No litter. Just stillness. The kind that made your ears ring. "Okay, this is seriously creepy," Renee muttered, brushing cobwebs off her jacket, but also kinda cool. Tyler had already claimed the far corner, tossing down his backpack and calling it his kingdom. Josh started filming with his old camcorder, the one he always brought on trips like this. "We're gonna tell our kids about this weekend," he laughed. But Kevin stood by the fireplace, staring into it like he was trying to remember something, or like something inside was staring back. Clara noticed, walked over, and nudged him gently. "You good?" He blinked. "Yeah, Yeah, just thought I saw something move in there. That night, they lit a small fire in the fireplace, using some twigs from outside. It didn't last long. The chimney was partially blocked, and smoke filled the room faster than they expected. They ended up using lanterns and headlamps instead. They played cards, passed around cheap whiskey, and laughed louder than they probably should have. At around 1 in the morning, Clara stepped outside to pee and take a breath. The woods were dead silent. Not a single owl, no wind, not even insects, just trees and that massive blanket of stars overhead. She was about to go back inside when she heard a noise. It wasn't a growl or a scream, just the soft sound of breathing, but not hers. It was coming from behind the cabin, slow, wheezing, like someone, or something with water in their lungs. She froze, for maybe 10 seconds. Then, in one motion, she bolted back inside and slammed the door. Everyone looked up. "You okay?" Josh asked. "Yeah," Clara lied. "Just cold." They didn't ask further. Later that night, long after the others had passed out in their sleeping bags, Clara stayed awake by the fire. Her headlamp cast long shadows across the cabin walls, dancing like twisted figures. Then she heard it again. This time inside, just a whisper, but unmistakable. "Clara." She sat straight up, whipped her head around. Nothing. Everyone else was asleep. She reached for her bag, pulled out her phone on instinct. No bars, of course, but the flashlight still worked. She scanned the room. Her beam landed on Kevin, who was now sitting up, eyes wide open, but unfocused. His lips were moving, but no sound came out. "Kevin," she whispered. He blinked slowly, looked at her, then spoke. "Don't stay here." Clara didn't move. Kevin's voice was flat, like he wasn't really awake. "What do you mean?" she whispered. But Kevin just lay back down, eyes still open, breathing shallow, as if nothing had happened. She barely slept that night. Every creak of the wood, every flicker of shadow made her heart race. And when the morning light finally pushed through the grimy windows, Clara felt like she'd aged a year. The others woke up slow, groggy, hungover. Tyler made jokes about ghosts and raccoons, while Renee complained about the cold. Clara just sipped instant coffee and stared out the window, scanning the trees. She hadn't forgotten the breathing. She hadn't forgotten Kevin's words. But Kevin, he didn't seem to remember saying anything. When Clara asked him, he looked confused. "I said what?" "No, I passed out early, dreamless sleep." "Why?" She didn't push. That afternoon, they hiked down to a nearby creek Josh had spotted on the map, just to break the tension, to remind themselves they were still young and alive and invincible. They skipped stones, took dumb photos, and tried to laugh. But Clara couldn't stop glancing back at the woods. At one point, she wandered a little too far upstream to pee alone again. The water ran clear over smooth stones, and the trees whispered above her like they were gossiping. Then she saw it, etched into the bark of a tree, half hidden by moss. "Stay out," we tried to warn them. The carving wasn't fresh. It had softened with time, the letters warped slightly as the tree grew, but it was clear enough to read. She ran her fingers over it. It felt real, deep, not a prank, not something kids would bother doing way out here. She snapped a photo with her phone, though there was still no signal. And when she turned around to head back, there was a man, standing in the distance, maybe 50 yards away, not moving, wearing what looked like old, dirty overalls. His face was hard to make out in the shadows, but Clara didn't wait. She ran, back to the others, back to the noise and fire and anything that felt remotely normal. When she told them, Tyler laughed. "So what? Some hermit lives out here. He probably thinks we're the creeps." Josh looked a little more serious. "You sure it wasn't a hunter or something?" Renee added, "Why would a hunter stand there and just watch? That's messed up." Kevin said nothing. He just stared into the fire again. That night, the air turned colder, and the woods seemed to lean in closer, like the trees themselves were listening. Inside the cabin, Clara kept the fire going while the others played cards. She kept checking the window. Nothing, just trees. But at exactly 2:16 a.m., she checked the time. She heard something fall in the back room. A thud. She wasn't even aware she was walking toward it until she was already at the old rotting door. The room had no furniture, just an old bed frame and dust. But on the wall, more carvings, hundreds of them. Names, some faded, some fresh. And a symbol. A circle with 3 jagged lines cutting through it like claws. She didn't recognize it, but it looked angry, alive. Then, from behind her, another whisper, closer this time. Clara. Clara spun around fast. Her flashlight beam caught nothing but swirling dust. No one was there. She backed out of the room slowly, her breath shallow and fast. As she turned, she nearly collided with Kevin, who was suddenly standing in the hallway behind her. He wasn't holding a light, just standing in the dark. "You saw it, didn't you?" he said softly. Clara stared. "The carvings," he nodded. "The symbol, it's been here longer than the cabin." She hesitated. "How do you know that?" "I don't," he muttered. "I just feel it." She wanted to push for more, but his eyes looked lost again, like they weren't his own. The next morning, they all decided to leave. The vibes were wrong. Even Tyler had stopped cracking jokes. Clara didn't tell them about the voice, or the man in the woods, or what Kevin had said. She just packed her bag, relieved to be leaving. But when they stepped outside, their trail was gone. The path they had hiked up the day before was gone. Overnight, the underbrush had shifted. The markers they tied to the trees were no longer there. It was as if the forest had rearranged itself. "What the hell?" Josh muttered. "It was right here." Tyler pulled out his phone and opened the GPS. Still no signal. "Okay, I know we came from the west. Let's just start moving." They walked for hours, circling trees, climbing hills, wading through thick brush. By late afternoon, Clara noticed something that made her stomach drop. The same tree, with the same carving. "Stay out." We tried to warn them. They were back where they started. "No way," Renee said. "No way, we just walked in a circle for 5 hours." Kevin knelt down, breathing hard. "It's the woods. They don't want us to leave." "Don't start with that creepy crap," Tyler snapped. "This is probably just bad navigation. We'll figure it out tomorrow." But that night, something changed. The air in the cabin was heavier. Every sound outside felt closer, sharper. At one point, Josh, who had been filming everything, checked his camcorder and went pale. "What?" Clara asked. He flipped the screen toward her. Footage from the night before. Clara, sleeping by the fire. Kevin, lying motionless. But in the corner of the room, near the door, a figure, standing still, unmoving, half in shadow. Not one of them. No one had seen it with their eyes. Only the camera caught it. Tyler swore and turned the camcorder off. "No, we are not doing this. We're leaving at first light." Renee agreed. Clara tried to stay calm. Kevin just stared at the dark window. "We should have never come here." Later that night, Clara dreamed of the woods. But in the dream, the trees had no leaves, and the sky was red. The cabin stood in the distance, but it was burning. And inside, she saw herself, standing, watching, whispering, to something that looked like her, but wasn't. Clara woke with a start, sweat cooling on her skin, despite the cold air. The dream clung to her like a shadow, burning cabin, red sky, and her reflection, watching, whispering to something dark. She sat up in the cabin, eyes adjusting to the flickering firelight. Kevin was awake, staring at the ceiling. "You had the same dream," he said quietly. She nodded. "Exactly the same," Tyler muttered from the corner. "Maybe the cabin's haunted or cursed or something." Renee scoffed. "Or we're just tired and losing it." But Clara wasn't so sure. The woods outside felt alive. Watching, waiting, they decided to stick together that day, exploring the area cautiously. Near the creek, Clara found more carvings, this time on stones by the water, symbols she didn't recognize, almost tribal, half worn away by time. Kevin traced them with his finger. Face, grave. These mean something. Something old. That evening, they tried to start a fire outside, but the wood wouldn't catch. The smoke twisted into shapes, faces, silent screams. Suddenly, a cold wind howled through the trees. It extinguished the flames. They ran inside, locking the cabin door. At night, the whispers returned, this time louder, more urgent. Leave, before, too late. Clara huddled under a blanket, heart pounding. She looked over at Kevin. He was awake, eyes glassy, unblinking. "Clara," he said, voice distant. "They're not just spirits. There's something else." Before she could ask what he meant, a knock came from the door. Slow, deliberate. No one dared move. Another knock, louder. Then silence. Clara held her breath, waiting. A shadow passed by the window. A whisper floated in the cold night air. "Welcome home." The morning sun barely pierced the thick canopy. Clara sat at the cabin's rickety table, nursing a weak cup of coffee. The tension was palpable. Kevin's strange behavior had worsened overnight. He didn't speak much, just stared into space, muttering words Clara couldn't quite catch. "We need to leave," Clara finally said, breaking the silence. Tyler nodded, but Josh looked uneasy. "What if we can't find the trail again?" Clara shook her head. "We don't have a choice. Staying here means worse." The group packed silently, glancing nervously at the windows, half expecting to see those shadow figures again. As they stepped outside, the forest seemed to breathe, alive, watching. Kevin stopped suddenly. "Look," he whispered. On a nearby tree was a fresh carving, a crude figure of a woman, hair flowing wildly, eyes hollow. Beneath her, the words, "She watches." Clara's blood ran cold. "Who is she?" Renee asked. "No idea," Clara answered, "but I don't want to find out." They hurried down the trail, but the forest twisted unnaturally. Paths led to dead ends. Trees seemed to shift positions. Hours passed like minutes. Panic set in. Just when Clara thought they might never escape, they reached a clearing. In the center stood a weathered stone statue, half buried in moss. An old woman with haunting eyes. The statue's lips seemed to move, whispering Clara's name. Clara felt a cold breeze brush her neck as the statue's whisper grew louder, filling the clearing with a haunting melody. Her heart pounded as she took a hesitant step forward. "Clara," the voice breathed. She froze, eyes fixed on the statue's lips, moving without sound. Suddenly, the forest around them seemed to warp, colors bleeding, shadows stretching unnaturally. Renee grabbed Clara's arm. "We need to go now." But Kevin stepped closer to the statue, his eyes glazed over. "No," he said quietly. "She's calling me." Tyler stepped between them. "Kevin, snap out of it." Kevin's head snapped toward Tyler, eyes wild. "She's the reason we're here." Clara's mind raced. Who is she?" Before Kevin could answer, the ground trembled. From the earth near the statue, dark tendrils of mist began to rise, curling like fingers reaching for the sky. The air grew thick, choking. Josh raised his camera, filming frantically. "Everyone, back up," Clara shouted, but it was too late. The tendrils wrapped around Kevin, lifting him off the ground. His scream echoed through the trees, fading as he vanished into the mist. The others stood frozen, fear rooting them in place. Clara swallowed hard, wiping tears from her eyes. "We have to finish this," she whispered. "Find out what she wants, or none of us will leave this forest alive." Clara stood frozen, eyes wide, heart pounding like a drum in her chest. Kevin was gone, swallowed by the dark mist. Renee sobbed quietly. Josh lowered his camera, pale as death. Tyler clenched his fists, trying to stay calm. "We have to find a way to stop her," Clara said, voice trembling but firm. "Who is she?" Josh asked. Clara took a deep breath, trying to piece together the fragments from their nightmares and the carvings. "Some say she was a witch, living centuries ago in these mountains, accused, betrayed, and cursed to haunt the forest forever." Tyler shook his head. "This is madness. But if we don't do something," Clara paused, "we'll be next." Determined, Clara led the group back toward the cabin. Inside, she found an old book on a dusty shelf, a journal with faded handwriting. Flipping through, Clara read aloud, "The woman watches, the forest whispers. To break the curse, one must find the hidden relic beneath the roots of the oldest tree." "Oldest tree?" Renee asked. Clara nodded. "There was an ancient oak near the creek. The carvings were near it." The group gathered their courage and set out, the forest thick with menace. When they reached the oak, Clara dug beneath the roots, hands trembling. Her fingers closed around something cold and metal, a small, rusted locket. As she held it up, the whispers ceased. The oppressive weight in the air lifted slightly. But suddenly, a shadow loomed behind them. The forest had one last secret to reveal. Clara turned slowly, clutching the locket in her hand. Behind them stood a figure tall, shrouded in tattered black, its face obscured by tangled hair and shadow. Renee gasped. Josh stumbled back, nearly falling. Tyler stepped forward, jaw clenched. Who are you?" Clara asked. The figure tilted its head. A low, guttural voice answered, "She took from me, now I take back." Then, in a sudden, jarring shift, the forest around them twisted. The trees groaned, reshaping themselves into something ancient, monstrous. They were no longer standing in the Appalachian woods. They were inside her memory. The world flickered, and they saw glimpses, flashes of a woman being dragged from her cabin by torchlight, men shouting, a child screaming, a fire roaring. "She was innocent," Clara whispered, tears welling. The ghostly figure, the woman, stood among them now. But her eyes weren't angry. They were hollow, lost. "She was cursed because they feared her," Clara said, piecing it together. "And the forest became her tomb." The locket pulsed with warmth in Clara's palm. "She needs peace." Clara stepped toward the ghost, offering the locket. For a long moment, nothing happened. Then the woman reached out. Her translucent fingers brushed Clara's hand. A sudden gust of wind rushed through the clearing. The forest moaned, and then fell silent. The shadows pulled back. The cold lifted. The statue in the clearing crumbled into dust. They were back in the real world, and Kevin was standing where the mist had taken him, confused but alive. "Clara?" he asked, voice shaking. She ran to him, hugging him tightly. "It's over," she whispered. "I think we set her free." The ranger's eyes were empty, void of panic or even concern. He didn't blink. He didn't ask questions. He just stood there, shotgun slung over his shoulder, and said, "Cabin's not supposed to be here anymore." Clara looked at him, confused. "What do you mean?" He didn't respond. Instead, he turned and motioned for them to follow. "I've been patrolling this area for 15 years. That cabin burned down in 1979. Arson, woman and her boy inside. People said she was a witch. Others said she was just mad with grief. Her husband disappeared into the mountain, and she waited every night with a lamp in the window, hoping he'd come back. When he didn't, she set the place on fire, took the kid with her. Tyler stopped walking. We stayed in that cabin. We lit a fire. We slept there." The ranger just shook his head slowly. "You couldn't have." When they made it back to the clearing, the cabin was gone. No ashes, no foundation, just leaves and twisted roots, as if nothing had ever stood there. Clara's hands trembled. Josh looked like he wanted to throw up. Kevin, ever the skeptic, just stared silently, finally understanding what none of them could explain. Later, when they went back to town, Clara searched online for any record of the cabin, the email they used to rent it, the map coordinates. Nothing existed. Even the post on the forum had vanished. All she could find was a single news clipping from October 31st, 1979. Mother and child perish in fire. Authorities believe the woman set the blaze herself. After weeks of delusional sightings and paranoia, locals have long considered the area cursed. No names were given, no photos, just a blurry black and white shot of a burned structure with 5 claw marks across the wooden doorframe. Clara never talked about it again, not to her friends, not to her family. But something followed her home, something that still whispers to her. On cold autumn nights, when the wind moves just right and the house settles too loudly, and sometimes, just sometimes, when she walks past a mirror she knows she didn't hang, there's a second reflection behind her, watching, waiting, whispering. She knows, if you're still here with me, thank you for walking this path into the shadows. These stories I share aren't just meant to scare, they're reminders that some things are better left forgotten. So if this story kept you up tonight, you're not alone. Let me know in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is for you right now. And if you felt that chill in your spine tonight, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this with someone who loves true horror as much as you do. Until next time, this is Clara Morgan, and you've just stepped into Clara After Dark. Sleep well, if you can,